Welcome to Medicine Story Podcast. I am Chivito Koa, Little Goat Crow, facilitator of the Tree of Totems Spiritual Wilderness School and Cultural Community. In these podcasts, we adopt the indigenous and ancestral lens of walking the inner road, gathering around the virtual fireside where we decolonize our stories and reclaim the medicine we carry into this world. And tonight, this is our very first time of doing what we call wisdom talks, where we get to spend some time in conversation with an elder or a wisdom keeper, medicine person. And again, this is our way of bringing the elders and the medicine people back into the circle, where we can lean into their wisdoms and their storied lives and feel that deep reflection into our own, who have yet to walk that part of the path, who find that deeper meaning in the paths that we have already walked. Yeah. So with that, I would love to introduce Lynne into our circle. I've had the pleasure of really journeying with Lynne this past year and getting to know her story and her experience. And she has just been an amazing inspiration for me and our community. And for me, she really has this embodied presence of what I consider the elder, who's really kind of matured into her life and where she is and how she holds herself and how she is intentionally dreaming her days in her life. And it's just really beautiful. And I'm very honored to be in conversation and share this conversation with all of you as we reflect on her own life and how life has created its own initiations, its own forms of descents and misdirections and beauty making and grief tending, all the things that mature us into the full authenticity of our life. And so that, Lynne, I'd love for you just to come in circle, introduce yourself and where you are and maybe just what you're feeling into. How are you coming into the circle?
Well, I have to say I'm coming in with great humility, gratitude, and I am so honored to be here and sharing my my story. I would like to say that we each have a story, right, that we're living out, and it's through the trauma that we come into our gifts. Unfortunately, that's the way this works, and it's not easy. It's very painful, and as we go through that process of looking at that trauma, it does become medicine. So when we begin to share these stories, like tonight, and that medicine can heal other people as well. And when we do that, I think our hearts are really open to a place where another energy seems to enter into the space. And I see this really as a gift relationship. So I enter tonight with you as a gifting, giving and receiving. And in that gifting, there's really a sacred space and a sacred relationship. So
thank you, Lynne.
Thank you, Chavita.
Yeah. And can you just share people where are you located right now? Where are you at?
Right now, I'm in Portland, Oregon, in a beautiful forest.
Wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
So those who are new to our way of holding council here, we call these our fire councils, and we always like to begin our councils by giving a form of beauty making and as well as sharing in some offerings. And the way we give offerings online is by sharing something we have some gratitude with and something we have some grief with. And so I would love to begin actually with just a poem, just to bring our hearts and our minds into this sacred space. And that beauty making is a way of giving attentions to the spirits and the ancestors, that they know that something sacred is happening, that there's beauty being contributed into the circle so they know to arrive and be attentive, to even speak with us and steward through our conversations. And so today I have a poem by Rumi, and I haven't heard this poem by Rumi yet. It's called The Silkworm. And before I recite this poem, I'd love to invite us all just to really arrive into this space and just connect in with your body. Connect in with where you are right now. And bring your attention to the attentiveness of the circle and the conversations that are about to occur. You know, what we call these unteachable learnings that are actually seeking us, trying to trail us back to our own home. As you're here, aware of just being in your body, in this room, in this circle, take in a slow, deep inhalation. And as you exhale, relax your whole body. Deep inhalation. As you exhale, relax your whole body. And allow yourself to fully arrive into this space. And lean into these words by Rumi, called The Silkworm. I stood before a silkworm one day. And that night, my heart said to me, I can do things like that. I can spin skies. I can spin skies. I can be woven into love that can bring warmth to people. I can be soft against a crying face. I can be soft against a crying face. I can be wings that lift, and I can travel on my 1,000 feet throughout the earth. My sacks filled with the sacred. And I replied to my heart, dear, can you really do all those things? Can you really do all those things? And my heart just nodded, yes, in silence. So we began and will never cease. And so we began and will never cease. Rumi. The poem is The Silkworm. It's really feeling in that poem today. It resonated because I really feel there's an essence and a presence of elderhood in that. There is that shifting to ask, what can the heart now contribute? What can the heart now dream? And all else begins to fall away. And that's something, and Lynne, I really feel you embody. And so I'd love to open up and just invite you, if you'd like to start with something you have gratitude for today, and maybe something you also are holding with some grief that you'd like to bring into the circle, and then I will do the same.
Yes, so I'd like to start with the gratitude. Of course, being here with this group is, I'm just very grateful, and my heart is really open. And that feels wonderful to be in that space, to be deeply rooted in that space. So for that, I'm very grateful. My grief is, at the moment, it's more of a global sort of grief for just the state of affairs around the world, how we are very insensitive in general to Mother Nature, and how generous she is, and how we are in this mindset of taking, and taking without gratitude and without humility. And so for that, I have deep grief, but I'm also very hopeful, because I know in groups like this, people working to change that mindset will send us hopefully off on a different tangent here, and to right that that wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Thank you.
I definitely share in that grief, the global pain that is occurring right now. And grief that's been really close to me, especially this last week or two, is the grief of the limitations of I feel what I can do and what I can contribute, and just wanting to be able to do more. And in the sense that there's only so much each of us can do, and um, yeah, so I've been really feeling into that grief, is just that limitations of what can be done within the amount of time that we have, when there's seems to be so much urgency in the world, from our youth to things that are happening in our
Mm-hmm.
political world, women's rights. It's incredible world that we're in right now. And my gratitude also goes into seeing how many people are showing up now, and gratitude of all the people who've really came before us, that we can stand up in a bigger way, and seeing so many people do it, and do it with such a form of beauty making and heart. And it's really inspiring to see so many people having a voice right now. And so that's a big gratitude I have, and as well as just the gratitude of you being here in circle with us to share your story, Lynn. So thank you with that. Yeah. Well, so yes, I'd love to just begin with uh, really tapping into where you are right now. I'd love for this interview, this conversation, to be a kind of journey where we kind of explore where you are now in the space of elderhood, and where you are in your heart and your mind, and how that may be different from previous years, that the dreaming you now get to rest into. And then we'll kind of explore, like, well, where were you just before this, and what was it that kind of triggered this transformation and this shifting into this embodied space. And then we'll kind of go on a journey of what was your life like a big life review, like where were you, where did you grow up, what was that time like, what was it like as a woman in those times, and what were the limitations of those times, and how did they steward you into your journey, as well as like what were those very specific moments in your life that kind of created the redirection that was unexpected, that stewarded you. um, does that sound good for you, Lynn?
Sounds good.
All right, wonderful.
I
So
may
yeah,
get off on some tangents, but we'll let it flow.
absolutely. Yeah. We're gonna let this just be alive and organic. Like let spirit come in and
That's
steward
right.
it. Yeah,
Right.
cool.
So where I am right now, I have to say I'm in a very um, peaceful, heart-centered spot at the moment, and I am so engaged in nature. Um, I've been living in this space for about 10 years, and it has changed me dramatically, but just recently taking me to layers of appreciation that I didn't know existed.
Mm,
Just little nuances, the tiny things. We think that everything has to be like the 4th of July, some big, gigantic experience. And I'm finding that I'm being pulled into this deep, deep, deep love that I've never experienced before in the tiniest ways. Um,
mm,
and right here in nature. So I'm really connecting, honoring Mother Earth, like I said earlier, she is generous, nurturing. She's giving us everything we need to survive. And I'm really leaning into that and appreciating that in ways that I've never really appreciated it quite
Oh,
so profoundly. Um, I'm hyper aware of the importance of not just taking, not just being on the receiving end and keeping things to ourselves, receiving beautiful food and just beauty making in nature in little ways of sunlight on the leaves, the wind, the birds, a multitude of things. Um, Instead of just taking that and holding it for the self, I'm really leaning into and feeling called to reciprocate, keep that flow going, that flow of what's coming into me. It's important for me in this gifting relationship to give that back in some way. Sometimes it seems a little woo woo, but I do it anyway. That as I'm eating food, I want to share that with people who are starving or malnourished. Now, that seems kind of weird because they're not next to me to give them my food, but I truly feel that at some level, I am able to embody that nourishment, that gift, that beauty, that love, and my gratitude, and give that back in some way at some level of consciousness where we're all connected. So for
oh,
me, that is so important, not only with food, but also just with the beauty around me. When I'm experiencing something beautiful, it's important for me to share that in some way. When I'm in a home, I'm protected from the elements. And there are people who don't have homes. It's important for me to share that gratitude that I have and my experience with them. So that's kind of my world now, is more about that reciprocity, the importance of gifting, not just receiving, but keeping that energy flowing and giving back any way
oh,
I can. Sometimes it is in the physical, but oftentimes it's in another energy field.
beautiful, Lynn. Beautiful. That reminds me, like when I was in living in India with my babas, and we would have our meals. We would take a certain amount of food and we would put it aside. And I would create two piles, and one was like for those ancestors and the divine who guide us, was a way of giving nourishment and gratitude. And the
Mm.
other was about giving nourishment to those who were in need of nourishment. And so there was this
Mm.
symbolic energy of feeding
Mm-hmm.
the world, and whether they were receiving that energy, we were putting that energy that they would be fed, that they would be taken care of. It also reminds me of the tradition of the Apache who do that race every year, where
Mm-hmm.
they get at the starting line and they fire the gun, all the relatives around them, and they just start running, but there's no finish line, right? And they just run and run and run for days, and there's no winner. And the reason why they run is just to feed the sun and the moon, to give their energy to the sun and the moon so they can continue their path across the sky. And their relatives actually go inside and they feast with the intention that through their feasting, they're giving energy to the runners. And so there's this beautiful reciprocity there and a beautiful ritual. And I'm really feeling that. And just even just the acknowledging of your shelter, that energy can be where others will find that shelter will find others. It's
Mm-hmm.
those little subtle intentions are so powerful. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And what you just said reminded me that I really am also honoring that sort of mythological dimension, right, of the earth, where through symbology, ritual, and ceremony, and that's a little ceremony that I do, right? Through that, you really activate another energy field, and um, leaning a lot into that activation. Um, yeah.
Oh, I love it, Lynn. Well, just big medicine just right there in your share. Yeah. I can feel I've kind of lapsed in that reminder to hold that energy in those prayers just for even being in this space and my food. So thank you for bringing that back in.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
So I'm curious, Lynn, like I know, especially this last year, you've been on a very profound journey. And before you really arrived in this space where you're just feeling really embodied and really present with it all, like how would you have described how you were just before this space?
So I would say before arriving, about a year ago, I was conflicted.
Mm.
I mean, I've been on this journey of self-discovery, of expanding my awareness, of developing and trying to reach, full potential, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. I've been on that journey for decades. And there have been times in my life, especially as a mother of 5 children, so there were 25 plus years where my whole program was being a mother. There was really not much room for anything else, although I took time every day to make sure I did my relaxation, my meditation twice a day, because I needed that time for myself. But I felt like the journey, I was alone on the journey. I was navigating this journey not really alone. I mean, I have this strong inner voice, this inner power, this inner something. I never really knew what to call it, but it was there, it was present, and it moved me through life. And I followed it. I listened to it. I didn't listen to all the other voices out there. I was really very nonconformist and very unconventional in the way I moved through life, but making a lot of mistakes along the way, right? Because I'm alone. I'm not really part of a tribe, part of a village, part of a community that can help me navigate, right? Help me move through some of my trauma. So up until about a year ago, really before joining this Tree of Totems, I was there. I was in that sort of conflicted space, kind of moving in and out of knowing what I needed to do, but collapsing into stories that were not really serving me at all. And so for about a 2 to 3 year period, I would say, I was putting a lot of energy into creating a new life for myself, really deciding, not deciding, really discovering who am I, aside from the mother of or the wife of. Who am I? That was my identity for so long, and I'm not complaining about it. It was exactly what I knew I was meant to do. From an early age, I'm very nurturing. I love to take care of people and all that stuff. And so I did that. But now I need to take care of me. Now it's time for me to discover who I am, and what other gifts do I have now to bring beyond my children and my husband, right?
Yeah.
So I look back and there were so many doors that were there, and some I didn't really want to go through, but I did. I said yes, and then I said yes again and again, and that led me to where I needed to be about a year ago with Chavito and Awakening the Sage Within, which was pivotal, transformational. That's when everything solidified.
Oh,
All the journeying, all that work that I felt I was doing alone in the sense of not having a community, not alone in the sense of not having my inner strength and power and voice, But now I had a community, and it's amazing the difference when you have that tribe, that village. Gosh, and it makes me realize how our society suffers so much without the rituals, the ceremonies, just the community to hold space for one going through whatever they're going through, whether it's grief, joy, whatever the condition may be. I'm eternally grateful. And so that's where that's where I was. And where I am now, I cannot believe it's been less than a year. Absolutely can't believe the transformation
Wow.
in
So,
such a short amount of time.
so it sounds like one of the things that really helped make the shift was coming into community, where you were able to be
Absolutely.
witness and to witness others.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's so much power in that, because when we are in community, we're in a safe space. And in that safe space, the way we connect is through telling our stories, like we're doing right now. When you
Mm,
tell your stories, you're really speaking from your heart. And when that heart space is open, it connects with other people. It's a tremendous power. And a lot of really beautiful things happen in that kind of space. It's magical. It is absolutely magical. And I can't imagine my life without a community,
right.
a village, really.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I feel so much in my own life. I've been blazing a trail. Then once we really started restoring the village culture and the people started gathering and the elders were coming in and there was the witnessing of each other's journey. The space being held just for our grief tending, and that it's beautiful to grief tend and it's not something shameful, and to
Yeah.
be in a place for that authenticity of soul. I feel like that's when my journey really started to grow and expand as well. That's a great reflection, and thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm. I'm curious. I think this is a common space, particularly for women, where they enter a time in their life when they start to ask it, like, well, what has all this work been done for? What does it really amounted to? And might be that time when we women become empty nesters, or there's a shift in relationships, or often even becoming empty nesters shifts relationships, or how what our relationships are with our partners in our careers. And there's that question of who we are. In so many sessions I've heard someone say, I've looked within and I don't know who's there. I don't
Mm.
know what that calling is. And the indigenous cultures, we call it being soul loss, or parts of us over the years of living our life. And I think this is especially true for women. There's this element where you carve off piece of yourselves in order to do what is necessary. And at the very end, you are wondering, well, who am I in this greater scheme, and how do I move forward from here? It's like, what was that process like for you, or did you have that experience, and what might have triggered that inquiry and that path?
So, like I mentioned, that being a mother for 25 plus years took a lot of my focus, right? But even prior to that, all of my life, as far back as I can remember, my energy was really directed towards mothering from a very early age. And so that is just part of me, nurturing, taking care of others, easing the burden of others. This was my lifelong story, right? Um, my younger self struggled with that because I that energy was very powerful, and it was directed outward, of course, in trying to help other people. but I was really searching for how to navigate relationships, the richness of relationships, the complexity of relationships. And so a lot of that mothering kind of instinct came out. And I would imagine it was very smothering for a lot of people in those relationships. But again, I was just trying to figure things out. At one point, I was able to realize I needed to balance that power out and go within. That's where I could really bring it into balance. So that's when I started sort of a meditation kind of practice on a daily basis, just to ground myself. So now this maternal instinct is a little bit tame, right? But when I have my children, it was completely focused on them. And even when they were all grown and gone, 25 plus years later, still that the expectation of excuse me, that expectation of family, the importance of family, my role as the nurturer and the caregiver, and wanting to fix everything. Oh, I don't want my children to just suffer, and always wanting to get in there and help. So that was a difficult process for me, was stepping back, getting out of the way. And Chavito, you helped me a lot with that by suggesting I shift my focus to trusting the path that they were on, trusting that they are being guided by a higher power. And my anxiety, my stresses, my worries could be interfering with their ability to be who they are, to really be on their path, right? So that was a process for me, was learning how to cut the cord, let them fall down, let them make mistakes, but holding them in that space. And with me holding them in that place of love and power was probably, not probably, it was a better way of honoring them and honoring their life. Wow. So that was the first big step for me. As I did that, what I realized was that whole notion, that whole expectation of family has to stay together. Family has to be together for all the celebrations, all the birthdays, all the holidays. Sometimes family is messy. Sometimes family just is chaotic. It's crazy. It doesn't work. So I let that go. I let that go. And if you had told me a year ago that I would be spending my birthday this month, it's a milestone birthday, with my soul, I'm going to say it quietly, my soul family, not my family, not my children. Well, I'll be with my husband, but I won't be with my children. That is a big step for me. And it's not that I'm running away from something. It's not that I'm trying to, escape anything. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm giving myself permission to be me, and to choose the things that make me happy now, because I know that when I'm taking care of myself, I really will be able to love and care for others in a better way, in a way where I'm not so attached to any sort of outcome, right? It'll be pure love and care and giving.
Yeah. I feel the power in that shift, Lynn. Wow. I feel the freedom of letting go of that other identity and that role of needing to care for and make sure everyone is taken care of and everyone else is taken care of but you. and now just holding that space of love, just they can have their experience. And I can feel you recognizing what a gift it is to let them have their experience, and the gift you're giving them by allowing you to have your experience and follow what's alive in you right now. That's a huge shift I think we all can lean into.
And I want to add one more thing. I am considering, seriously considering, as I retire at the end of this year, we're relocating somewhere, and I'm looking at very far away, like far away France, where my husband's from. And if you had told me that I would go that far away from, in fact, somebody I told that to recently, she said, well, the last time we talked about what you were going to do in retirement, you said you would not be very far, you would relocate, but never far away from your children. And what a difference, in just a few months, that I am really stepping into all these possibilities.
Amazing.
I'm just letting go of the limitations and exploring all the possibilities. It's exciting. I feel like I'm in my 20s again.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You really pass through that threshold into this next stage of life. And, through that mythic ancestral lens, that's what's called initiation, right? I know, like in India and so forth, like when we reach the age of 70, that's kind of our middle age. That's when we get to fully live our life and step into it. And
that's where I am. So that's awesome.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're at level 70 as of this month, right?
Yep.
I love it. Oh,
halfway through. That's awesome.
Yeah. Home diggity. I'm curious. Let's reflect back. Like, I'm so curious on your childhood. Like, where did you grow up, and what was that like for you? Like, particularly, like maybe in your teens and stuff, like that era and that time, your family. What was that like for you?
Oh boy. When I talk about my childhood with my kids, they think I'm exaggerating. It can't be true. But I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and unlike most small towns, Harvey S. Firestone family had a huge farm, and they donated, I don't know, something like 70 acres of land to this town that could never be developed. So we had this amazing rolling hills and forests and winding roads through this park in our little town. And we had an Olympic-sized pool. We had tennis courts, basketball, all the team sports, football, track, baseball, all that stuff. We had a duck pond where we would ice skate in the winter and fish in the summer. You name it. It was just like a paradise. No fences, total freedom. It was a dream. And then I look back on my kids. We had all our fences, and everybody was protected, and doors were locked, and so much fear. And so I grew up in a time and a place that was relatively fear-free. And so along with that, we had so much freedom and independence, just roaming all the time with all of our friends, and getting to just experience so many wonderful things without, parents hovering over us,
right,
or being fenced in any way. So I'm very grateful for that experience.
Wow. What were your family dynamics like? And
that's
that time?
It was more, I was on my own.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. I had an older sister, younger brother, but we were just sort of all on our own. Our parents had a very challenging relationship. They were young, and failed expectations. That was the big thing, right? Failed expectations of what a marriage was supposed to be like, and how perfect everything was supposed to be, and then how unequipped they were in understanding how to navigate it when it wasn't perfect.
Mm.
And so they were so busy with their stuff that we I felt like I grew up alone in a way. Not lonely, not ever lonely, because I was so connected to something deep inside of me from a really early age, but I was kind of doing my own thing. And I look back on it, I guess it could be worse. Could have had parents who shamed me and criticized me and all of that stuff that I hear about. We didn't I didn't experience that at all. So um
I could really resonate with that. And I really felt kind of estranged from my family as well, where I was very alone. And I kind of found when I started reflecting back on my own life story and that harvest, how that sense of almost being orphaned from my own family,
mhm,
there was a grief that was there, but actually it kind of pushed me into the direction of my path, like what was deeper inside me. Like it actually gave me permission to explore that. I'm curious if, those parameters that you were in there, kind of being more alone, how did that help shape who you like grew into and what you were leaning into at that time?
so that's exactly true. That's exactly what happened. It did push me deeper into me, right? Deeper layers of who I am. And what I discovered is that um, I just saw the world in a different way. I did not resonate with the masses. I had a good group of friends in this small town, but we, in high school, then we moved to a city and it was a totally different culture. And I just did not really resonate with the masses. And
Hmm.
so, as you mentioned earlier, blazing your own trail, I just felt like I was always blazing my own trail, following my own beat, my own drum beat.
Yeah.
And but I was okay with it. That was important for me, was to know that regardless of how lonely I might be, um, that it was okay to be in that space and on that path, because there was something so much greater going on. And I felt at home there. I felt good there. And so it was all right.
Yeah.
Um, so as I navigated through that in my teens, again, it was that strong urge to nurture, to take care of, I had a huge heart, and my love was big,
Mm.
but oftentimes that was misunderstood.
Mm.
And it was misunderstood, and oftentimes um I would find myself in situations where I was being taken advantage of
Mm.
because I was so open, right? So I
Wow.
was beginning to experience those feelings of some disappointment that not everybody is loving and kind in this world. So I was beginning to navigate that and learning to put some parameters around and guardrails there to protect myself, right? So that was a really important
Mm.
um, lesson for me during those teen years.
I could totally resonate with that. That there's
Mm.
in so many different cultures, there's this understanding that we are being dreamt into the world, and that in that dreaming there is this intelligence that's kind of stewarding us. We're kind of gifted almost like this special like intelligence like that stewarding us. And like the Greek tradition is called a daimo, in the Latin tradition was called your inner genius. I think the Africans call it your divine flame or your divine twin that's stewarding you. Native Americans actually call it the same thing. And Norse traditions, they even call it a hug, which is there's this presence, there's this energy that says, yeah, this is your dreaming, and we're going to steward you through these gifts and protect you, and yet craft these experiences for you to mature into it. And it sounds like you had a very strong, like hug, like very strong understanding of that dreaming. But I think, like I experienced, I imagine a lot of us here, it's like as we try to blossom and be that medicine, we realize the world doesn't necessarily receive it or honor it. And that's kind of part of that journey. So I'm curious how, by grading where people weren't receiving it and honoring it, how did that start to shapeshift your path? And how did that help initiate you into maybe different strengths or resources?
Well, I think what happened was it really it really caused me to be hyper alert, I guess you could say. Very, very much, very, very alert and observant, and learning how to navigate and identify people who were speaking from the heart, who were truly speaking truth, right? And those who weren't. So I really was able to connect or tune into people's energy. I learned to do that at a very young age, and that was very helpful for me because I am sure by being able to tap into that energy and determine whether or not someone was authentic or not was saved me a lot of grief, I would imagine. So very grateful for that ability. Sometimes I still have that strong ability to feel the energy of others, and sometimes it's a real challenge
Um,
um, to navigate that that path when you're with some people that you have no control over, but they're in your life. That's a tough place to be when you're feeling that kind of energy, and there's really not a lot you can do about it. You can talk about it, you can yeah, you can talk about it, but you oftentimes, I find that oftentimes just bringing it up or talking about it can create a lot of discourse and dissonance if someone isn't ready to have that conversation.
oh,
So
wow. Right. Well said.
yeah.
In our, I found that for a lot of people in our earlier 20s, our 20 years and so forth, we have this, this drive where we're kind of testing ourselves with the world, like what can we do? And there's this element of finding our place in the world despite the limitations of the times. And we're always kind of pushing that envelope and kind of blazing a trail. We're in our youth, we're kind of pretty unaware of what we're doing.
Hmm.
We're just going for it. And we kind of have an adversarial energy in space. I'm curious if you had that. What did that actually look like for you?
So the adversarial energy.
Adversarial, like that pursuit, like what, like for you specifically in your time, what energies were you maybe bumping up against? Maybe it was as a woman in these times, and where your
Mm.
role was it maybe in college? Where do you find your place in society or family? Like what were those edges that you were contending with?
Well, so it was in the 60s, right? So there were lots of edges,
Mhm.
especially for women. I mean, I was part of the burning the bra and just all that stuff. Um, and here we are, kind of in the same place. Um, I was fighting the fight, and I believe that growing up in that time period for me uh, was ideal because I was unconventional anyway. I was a nonconformist just by nature, I guess. And so that gave me a platform, right, to be express that, to express being different, or to express not so much wanting to be different. It was knowing that there was something bigger out there, something more important to discover in life, something else to live other than this conditional sort of monoculture intellectual sort of society that we were in.
Right.
It was important for me to embody that, to be part of that movement of changing the way we were thinking and the way we were being in the world.
Right.
Well, here we are, kind of back in that same position of,
Right.
not really paying attention to what's really important, and that is taking care of our mother.
Right.
That's the most important thing. Without her, nothing else
Cool.
really matters.
Now, if I recall, my dates aren't quite correct, but wasn't it in the 60s or 70s when women were able to finally have their own bank account and own
So
property?
yes, I mean, I'm part of that. So my mother, yes, she had to have a joint account. Well, she didn't have an account. It was my father's, and she didn't have a credit card until sometime in the 70s. I worked from the time I was 11. I was babysitting, and then I was working through school. I had to put my money in my parents' and my father's checking account and keep track of all the money that was mine, and have him pull money out for me. So
Mm,
I started college in 70, and I did not have a checking account.
wow.
I did not. So it was probably after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And so there was another thing that that really bothered me. And that was women, my mother's generation, feeling like they didn't have a voice. Well, they didn't have a voice, not feeling like they did not have a voice. And I'm just generalizing, right? Some women did learn to claim their authentic voice, but many women didn't. My mother tried. She was a very independent woman and a beautiful woman, but dad was boss, right? Dad
Mm,
was the boss, and a woman needed a man for financial stability. That really did not resonate well with me at all. But I found myself twice in my life. Once when I was in my early 30s with a brand new baby. My young husband and I had our own business together, and we were starving artists, but we had a little side business, of commercial photography to help support our art. We were poor, but we were happy. And we just had a baby, and about 6 months in, he was diagnosed with cancer and sent home to die, which he did about, I don't know, 4 months later. So here I was, no money, no husband, no father of my child. I mean, I was a single mother, and at an early age when that's really not on the radar. That was not an expectation that 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 was not supposed to happen at all. And so I found myself really in a deep state of terror, grief, grieving the loss, of course, but I was terrified of what I would do with my life. I didn't have a child, so I could hand it off to someone else to raise. That was so important to me, to raise my own children.
mhm.
And I was in a total panic. And I was dependent on him because without him, the business wasn't going to work. It was just one of those kind of situations where it took both of us to do that work. So that was one time. The second time it happened to me was I was probably I was in my 50s. And my second husband was diagnosed with cancer. And here I am again asking, what did I not learn the first time around? Why am I going through this again?
Mm.
And what came to my mind was, well, the most important thing was, of course, my focus was on him, but I was also thinking, I do not want to be dependent on a man anymore. I want to be able to support myself. And I really wanted to heal that. Ancestrally, I really wanted to heal that. I wanted to stop that notion that women need a man for financial stability and support. I know some of you young people on here probably don't experience that, or maybe you have or haven't. I don't know, but that was a big thing. That was a big thing in my mind too, and my mother and my grandmothers. You know, you depended on a man for that, and I was about to lose the second one, and I was not going to go through that again. So I finished school. I had almost finished my degree like 40 some years before that. Finally finished my degree at 58 and found a really good job. How? With 2 strikes against me, being a woman and being 58 years old. No, I was 60. Yeah, I was 60. And I got a really good job, and I'm in a position now where at the end of the year I can retire and feel like I can retire and not be living in poverty. So close, but not in poverty.
Wow. That's such an
So
amazing example of like rites of passage and how like limitations like of life and circumstances have this way of forcing us into our own strengths and say, well, what is my values? What is it that I'm going to take a stand for? And like listening into your earlier years where you're a part of that, the burning of the bras and women couldn't have bank accounts and so forth, is that reflection that like the medicine that we carry as a people isn't necessarily our techniques or our knowledge or our wisdom, but it's the process we go through in order to evolve the times, and that we have to be in those constricted times and that consciousness in order to evolve them through our own progression. And I'm hearing like so much courage, Lynn, just to step up and say, hey, I'm going to have a voice where my mother didn't have a voice. I'm going to live a life that is unbound. And also, you know, the consequences, there was some poverty, there was uncertainty, there was, you know, things you had to navigate when you lost your first husband and you had this newborn. And yet I can only imagine the strength and the resilience, the power you had to draw within yourself to say, yeah, we're going to survive, we're going to thrive in our own way. And like you evolve the times, as Thomas is just saying, you evolve the times, and you part of that medicine. And even at 60, you were evolving the times. It's like, no, this is a new paradigm. This is me taking back my sovereignty. And I think that's a really good example of how our life kind of forces us into direct contact with our strengths that we may not otherwise have harnessed.
and also, Chavito, I think it's really important to highlight the fact that I didn't let those old paradigms influence me. So I knew that I was a woman and I was 60, but I had I had an intention, and I can tell you there's so much power in being so clear of what you want and focusing on that. I didn't focus on, oh gosh, I'm a woman, I'm old, they're never going to hire. No, I was right here focusing on, I need a job. I need a good paying job, and I need to build some wealth. And I am not a corporate person at all. That's not ever a field that I was ever in, but I chose that for this part of my life. And I found one that's so unique and unusual. Of all corporations, it would be the one that I would be okay being a part of. So that was important too.
Yeah.
But I manifested these things by putting my energy and my focus on what I wanted, where I wanted to go. Same thing when I lost my first husband. I thought, I'm not going to sit here forever wearing black and being a single mother and having my child being an only child. No, I absolutely did not want that. And the power in me really, as I was grieving his loss, absolutely holding that and grieving that, at the same time being able to hold this dream of a new life at the same time. And it happened. I
Wow.
married one of our best friends.
Wow.
And we're 35 years later still married.
Wow. Wow.
So there you go.
That is a powerful journey, Lynn. Wow. I'm curious, just wanting to lean into a little bit how those moments of grief, um, how did they initiate you into your strength and just those deeper layers of life? Because I could feel you hold those layers of life, those deeper, rich textures of life so close to your heart. And that's just through our conversations and our sessions. I feel that what gives you that power to relate with nature and the earth and others so well. How do you feel those moments of grief were actually initiations into those deeper layers and relatedness?
That's what they were. Without those traumas, I wouldn't be who I am today, I don't think.
Wow.
Maybe maybe a lesser version. Because I do know that I was connected to something. I was connected to something very early in life that I wasn't able to talk about or share with anybody else. They thought I was crazy if I
Mm,
did bring it up. And so I knew that this was something, at least at that point in time, that moment in time, to keep within myself. And I think that in itself kept me on this path of being connected to a power much greater than myself, for sure. And then when I had these moments of trauma, I was able to immediately just root myself, ground myself in that. I thank goodness I had that.
yeah.
There were moments when, especially the first trauma, the big trauma with my first husband and having a baby, there were moments when I really didn't want to be here. I just didn't want to deal with the pain, first of all, but then to have to navigate, what do I do? How do I make this work with this little baby? There were
Right.
moments when I really did want to give up, but there was something inside of me that absolutely just sort of grabbed me and held me and just sort of pushed me
Mm,
through. Um, Thank goodness for that.
mm, mm. I love that. I love how you keep tapping into there was that presence that gave you that other strength that kind of showed up and that comes back into those
Yeah.
ancestral knowledge of like the who, that guardian spirit that accompanies us. And I think
Yeah.
too often we don't really give it enough validation, acknowledgement. And I think we're kind of coming in this period of our life, in this era where we can acknowledge it. We have that freedom. And I know just through our work with Awaken the Sage and this dream work, where we start to recognize we can apprentice ourselves to the dreaming. We can ask, how am I being dreamt into the world? And how do I support that intelligence that's greater than mine? Uh, I love this phrase, nourish what you love, so what you love continues to nourish you.
Mm-hmm.
We can love that intelligence guiding us. It changes the whole path, and I can feel that with you. I'm curious now, with where you are, how are you dialoguing with that? How have you come into being a rooted relationship with
Mm-hmm. Well, my my ritual, my ceremony is every morning I do dialogue with lots of energies. I do my greetings and gratitudes to many different parts of creation. And one of those very important ones, it's my, and I don't know if I have multiple guardian angels, spirit guides, one, I don't know, and I don't care. I just say to all my guides, deep, deep, deep bows and deep, deep, deep gratitude.
it?
I know they have, I know they have cleared the path for me multiple times in different shapes and different forms. One time in particular, came to my side as a dog and protected me from something horrific that would have happened to me, and then disappeared. I mean, I've had situations happen like that to me. I say my thanks and my gratitude and hold them in my heart, deeply, every
Oh,
day, every single day.
oh,
And then I start my day with, of course, a meditation, but also, just asking permission to Spider Woman to sit with her and to co-weave my life.
oh,
And I I think it's important to ask permission, right?
yeah.
Um, it's humbling, and we do need a little bit more humility in the world. Um, but I also believe that, well, as you say, Chavito, I can't remember the whole three lines to it, but I'll just summarize it. What we focus on expands, right? So we're constantly thinking, speaking, acting. We're creating all the time, right? And so whether we're doing it regardless of whether we're aware or unaware, whether we're awake or asleep, we are creating.
Oh,
And so what I want to do, I want to be part of that process. I don't
mm,
want to be asleep and have life just happening to me or through me. I want to be an active participant in my life. And I've
oh,
seen it happen over and over and over again, where I intentionally set something very specific, in motion, and it happens. Not it may I mean, it's not always, it may not be exactly the way you would like it to be, but that's why we're co-creating, because there's another power that knows more than we know. So they kind of know the path we need to be on. But I really feel that being part of that process for me is very important. And I'd rather have a life of by design rather than by default, because there will be a life by default if I choose not to be a participant in the co-weaving,
Oh.
right? So I'd rather, why not be part of the process and have fun with it? It's fun. It's really
Mhm.
fun. And I'm enjoying it a lot.
Mhm. Oh, I love it. I could feel the fun and the playfulness in it. And just the intimacy too, to be in relationship with the dreaming, to be a part of the co-weaving. You say it so eloquently, Lynn. I love it so much. Like, why wouldn't you
Thank you.
want to be a part of the weaving of the journey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. I'm curious, we're kind of coming to, the close of our conversation here, and I'm kind of curious, like, what are you taking with you from our conversation? Like, what was this like for you?
Mm, wow. Um, Again, pure joy, gratitude, humility. I mean, gosh, to be able to share my story um, is really, it's an honor. Um, and I just love that whole process of sharing.
Oh,
It's very intimate. It's heart to heart, and it's truly a gift relationship. And so, I mean, for me, that's what life is all about. It's gifting.
yeah,
So that's what
absolutely.
I take from this. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. That is definitely an important part of village culture, is that reciprocity of just being able to be witnessed and to share. To
hmm.
we realize that we each come into the world with unique gifts and our express, as the old ones say, as like, we each come into the world with a song, and you are that song. And our path in this life is maturing into that song, and learning to sing it and share it, and in learning to share it, we actually empower others to recognize their own song. And I really feel you've done that for me in this conversation,
Mm.
and I'm sure you've helped others recognize their own song and initiations and stories. So um, with a few minutes,
Mm.
if you're open, I'm just curious if anyone has any comments or shares, like, what are you guys taking from those who are listening into this conversation? Um, what has this brought up for you, or what are you taking with you? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Let's see here. I'm going back to gallery.
I'd love to jump in and share something actually.
Please.
So Lynn, I've known you for uh I think under 2 years, but I've just absolutely adored your presence in your wisdom in so many of these council circles that we get to sit in together. And I'm just like, I today you blow me away in a way that is so beautiful, because it gives me hope and inspiration, how to like feel into my journey, which has been a journey, right? And you show up with so much playfulness and wisdom and just the grit of the journey, and you process it, and it shows up in this grace. I really want to just celebrate you and just say that to hear your story gives me so much hope, because and one thing I will equally, I just will say this still, is that I have erroneously actually as a man, I have erroneously thought that the role models in my life had to be men. And I learned that a while back, but here you are again, returning me back to that place of just realizing how amazing. Yeah. how amazing.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Thomas.
I'm kind of losing my words there, but I just want to celebrate you. I love you so much. Thank you for this.
Thank you. I love you too. And let me just say, you know, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, it lives in both genders, right? Both of those are important.
Yeah.
A balance of the two. When we talk about the divine feminine, that's not just something for us women. That's something for men to lean into and honor within themselves, right? So then and only then can we truly be in balance, stop that pendulum from swinging from a masculine imbalance or a feminine imbalance, but come in the middle and stop. And that's where we all really honor each other.
That's, you know, that speaks to me so deeply right now. And I don't even know how to explain this, but I have been feeling that this energy of the womb wisdom that wants to come through me as a man, that feminine wisdom, you know, to balance things out, I guess. I can't explain it better than that, but I'm just like, I'm feeling this like watery womb of creations that wants to show up. And so, yeah, I love what you just said there.
Oh, yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, sister.
Thank you, brother.
Jen, I know you had your hand raised. Did you still want to come in?
Hi, Lynn, thank you. Thank you so much for your words and your presence and your sharing. I just recently lost my mother, and before my mother passed on, there was I went through I'm in the beginning of my own eldership, and there was a time and a place where I was feeling some deep anger towards my mom for having kind of missed out on the experience of her own rites of passage, and learning how to have grace and forgiveness for that, but also some anger that she couldn't guide me through what I'm starting to go through. And as I would ask her, you know, about these things, even just the physicalities of menopause, she wasn't able to offer me much. And then when my mother passed, it was like a week of straight ceremony and ritual. And there are these incredible moments of being just in ceremony, in flow, seeing spirals and circles and how these things are supposed to operate, and moving into that flow as spirit pulls you in. And the grace and the mercy that just expanded my heart, my chest felt like it was burning just from the fire and the expansion. And I feel closer to my mom as an ancestor than I ever have, like that she sees and that she can guide me through. But to know that there are elder women who are coming into the village space and the community space and taking that position and honoring that responsibility to guide us through this process of becoming elders is I have so much gratitude for that, because it's lonely and it's hard to guide yourself through these rites of passage. And yes, we can lean into source and spirit and into village and community, but to have somebody that can reflect and validate your future as well as your past, like be able to move through that time-space continuum and reflect back to you the movement of this passage. Thank you. So from my heart to yours, deeply, deeply thank you for embodying that space, because we need you. We need it. We need it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jen. Yeah, I'm grieving with you with the loss of your mother and holding that space as well. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending this council. And thank you, Lynn, for so graciously and generously sharing your story and your path and all you've experienced. And there's so much gratitude, so much gratitude. And Lynn, if you'd be willing to stay on here just a minute, we can just connect in one-on-one here. Way we like to finish our councils is we like to do our wolf howls or do a raven caw, or if you're connected to a duck, you can quack. But we like to bring that in the circle and bring that celebration and joy in.
And be careful, Thomas. You might call in the wild out there in the wilderness. Careful.
I hope so, Lynn. I hope so.
So if you all would like to unmute yourselves, we'll howl together and we'll witness Thomas become wolf bait.
What does a bear sound like, you guys? I've never heard a bear.
All right.
Oh,
Oh,
they kind of growl.
Grunt.
we'll howl together here. All right, everyone.
Oh, so much love to you all.
Home.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Chavito.
Thank you. Bye, Tom.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Medicine Story Podcast. If you wish to explore our upcoming gatherings, offerings, and cultural community, you can visit us at treeoftotems.com. Once again, I am Chivito Koa, Little Goat Crow. Thank you for gathering with me today. Om.